Good morning, everyone. Our topic today is Captain Scott journey to the South Pole. Subject is the English colonies, Today's book, pages 48 to 50. So we have a YouTube video, and I will be playing the YouTube video for some few minutes, then we can move on.
Captain Scott.
Captain Robert Falcon Scott was a naval officer and explorer. In June 1910, Scott and a team of men left Britain for Antarctica. At that time, no one had ever reached the South Pole in Antarctica, and Scott wanted to be the first. Scott's boat reached the Antarctic in January 1911. It had to get there in the Antarctic summer, so the ship could break through the ice to get to land. After setting up camp, the men had to wait through the long, dark Antarctic winter. Only in the following summer would it be warm and light enough to set out for the South Pole.
Base camp.
Scott and his team set up a base camp. They had brought a wooden hut with them, cut into sections which they put together. The walls were packed with seaweed to keep out the wind and cold. Even in the Antarctic summer, the temperature is only 2 degrees Celsius, just above freezing.
Setting out.
During the long Antarctic winter, when the temperature had dropped to minus 40 degrees Celsius, Scott sent out a group of 4 men with 2 motor sledges to drop food and fuel along their route. On the 2nd of November, 1911, Scott and 9 other men set out with ponies. The final 4 men followed later with dogs. The South Pole was nearly 1,500 kilometers away. The motor sledges broke down after 80 kilometers. The ponies were not used to the freezing weather, and one by one they died. The dogs were sent back to base camp because there was no food left to feed them. Now the men had to pull the sledges themselves. The men needed extra food, but Scott had not made any plans for this. They grew weaker and began to slow down.
The South Pole.
Scott planned that most of the men would turn back at stages along the way. Only 5 men made the last step of the journey to the South Pole. Scott reached the South Pole on the 17th of January, 1912, 76 days after they had set out. But they were not the first to get there. Another explorer, Norwegian Roald Amundsen, had beaten them. Bitterly disappointed and very tired, the men were faced with the same journey they had just completed to get back to base.
Food.
Scott and his men ate frozen seal meat, dry biscuits, raisins, and a mix of fat and dried meat called pemmican. They boiled water for making tea or cocoa to warm themselves up. If the weather was good, the men walked for over 9 hours each day. But pulling the sledges for about 19 kilometers a day was very tiring work.
Illness.
The weather got worse, with strong freezing winds. The men got frostbite in their fingers and toes, which made them turn black and go numb. The bright sunshine and the white snow hurt the men's eyes, and they got snow blindness. They were losing weight, and their food rations were too small. One of the men died in his sleep. Another man knew he would not make it back, so he walked out of the tent and was never seen again.
Blizzard.
Soon they became too tired to walk more than about 9 kilometers each day. By the time the remaining 3 men made their final camp, their food had run out. Scott decided to stay with the sledges and send the other 2 men to get supplies from the food camp 18 kilometers away. They would get there faster without pulling sledges. A terrible blizzard came. The 2 men set off, but they couldn't see where they were going, and they were forced to turn back. They waited inside the tent for the storm to end.
The end.
The temperature dropped to minus 40 degrees Celsius. Scott had been keeping a diary, and on the 29th of March, 1912, he wrote, "The end cannot be far. It seems a pity, but I do not think I can write more." Without food or fuel to heat water, they could not survive. 8 months later, on the 12th of November 1912, their tent was found, along with the bodies of the 3 men. A monument was made with blocks of ice.
Captain Scott. Hero?
Many people think that Scott's journey was badly planned. Without dogs, the men had to do too much work. They didn't take enough food to make up for the hard work of pulling the sledges, or for delays because of bad weather. But Scott was a brave explorer and one of the first men to reach the South Pole. So to many people, he is a British hero.
Okay, let's continue. So that is all about Captain Scott, the journey to the South Pole. It is a non-fiction text. It is real. It contains fact. It contains information. This is about Captain Robert Falcon Scott. He was a British naval officer and an explorer and decided to go to the South Pole. But it was badly planned. They didn't take enough food with them. The weather was really very cold. So at the end, they died. They were never found. I'm just waiting for the page to load. All right, so we're going to read these pages together. So we have an activity. And in the activity, I would like the learners to circle the letters of the ending you choose. The dogs were sent back to base camp because why did they send the dogs back? And Scott and his men had to spend winter in the base camp. Why? Scott and his men were disappointed when they got to the South Pole. Why were they disappointed? Scott and his men did not survive. Why is it that they did not survive? So these are the answers to our activity. So we also have verbs in the past tense. We have an activity. Choose the right answer below. What is a verb? Is it a word that joins 2 words together? Is it a type of soup? Is it an action word or a doing word? So we have already talked about present, past, and future tenses. Today we play, tomorrow we will play, yesterday we played. We talked about regular past tense verb and we also talked about irregular past tense verb. A regular past tense verb, all you need to do is add ed to the verb to change it into a past tense. But for irregular past tense verb, the spelling of the word will change. So we have an activity. Change the word live into present, past, and future. So we have an activity and I will click on the page. I'll be clicking on my page. So find the verbs in the sentences and underline them. Then write the sentences in the past tense. The whales play in the water with their cars. What is the verb here? What is the action word or the doing word? What did the whales do? Very good. It's play. So we have to change this verb into a past tense. So let's change play into a past tense. Very good. It will be played. So it will be the whales played in the water with their cows. Let's check the answers to our activities. Okay. All right. So that is the end of our lesson. Our homework is going to be in the Collins Workbook, pages 26 and 27. Send it to Tommy at talentschools.com. Thank you.